Do you want your face to come out?
I don't care.
Cause I gotta go way over here.
Yeah. Let me know when you're recording.
I'm already recording. You scratching your arm.
Okay. So we're getting ready to hardline this pump here.
All right.
Yeah.
We're gonna start putting together this front piston pump for the rocket. We got our dump, we got our slowdown, and we got the pump mounted here. Most importantly, excuse me, bro. Patent pending, homemade jig. You know what I'm saying? Oh man, lonestar lows. What you know about that? Not a damn thing.
Yeah, homemade jig.
Yeah, hey man, that thing is definitely making life easier.
Yep.
So we're gonna start putting this thing together, plumbing it. Yeah, man.
All right, so what we're getting ready to do now is we're gonna bend this. We're gonna bend a hard line, stainless steel tubing. It's 1/2 inch, 049 wall, seamless stainless steel tubing. We're gonna bend it from our return. Of course, this is our pressure going out. We got our. This is gonna go our pressures to our bulkheads, the slow down, dump, and our return. Our return is gonna come out. It's gonna go over the tank. It's gonna come down. And it's gonna hit the return right here. It's a pretty simple setup, nothing too extravagant, and I think we had already said that we was gonna come out, we wanted to come out 7 inches, okay? But if you come out 7 inches, with the bender that I have, which is right here, okay, you have to accommodate.
What kind of benders are those?
It's a rigid bender. I have a 1/2 inch and I have a 3/8. So you have to not accommodate, but you have to plan, or whatever the word is, for the radius of the bend, okay? And the radius on this bender right here is 1/2 inch. On the 3/8, it's 1 inch. And the way you determine that is you measure from the zero mark to the edge of the bend, or actually to the center of where the line would be, which comes out approximately to 1.5 inches. It falls about 1.5 inches. So you have to accommodate for the radius of the bend to add to the length of your line, if that makes sense. So we said that we was going to come out 7 inches from this, right? So we're going to mark 7 inches, which I think we already did.
Oh, we need to mark it.
Okay, so let's just mark 7 inches. Tape measure. Okay, we're at 7. Okay, so what that's going to do is we're going to actually end up at 8.5.
Bend it at the 7 mark.
Bend it at the 7 mark to end up with 8.5, which is probably going to be around here. So around at the 7, it's going to start the bend, and it's going to end up 8.5 inches from the end. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta muscle that.
Hey, 1/2 inch, 049.
It ain't no pump, man.
No, it ain't no pump, man. Sometimes you gotta put it on the floor. So what you do is you put your mark. We marked at 7 inches. You're gonna put your mark at 0 and 0. Right? And you want to bend it until it's at 90. Right. 90-degree bend, 45-degree bend, 90-degree bend, 180, which is extremely hard with 1/2 inch, and whatever these are, middle of 0 and 45. So 90-degree bend. Degree bend. Okay. So then we put it here. Okay. And we should be at about 8.5 inches. From this, we'll come around here. So what we're looking at is from the edge of this to the middle of the tubing should be 8.5 inches. It's 8.5 inches. Okay. So now we got to figure out where we want to come down at Okay, we want to come down over here to meet the return. Okay, but we need to measure the distance from the middle of this fitting to the middle of this fitting, which we already did, which came out to 11 inches. So factor in the 1.5 inches for the radius of the bend, because we're coming down. We need to start the bend at 9.5. Does that make sense? 1.5 inches. So we're gonna start the bend at 9.5. It's gonna roll over an extra 1.5 inches, and it should line up with this. And the way we determined that was, like I said, we measured the middle of this fitting to the middle of this fitting, which is kind of tricky. You can't, you know what I mean? You can't measure it like that. You kind of, you kind of got to add this plus this plus this. So it's kind of eyeballing. So what do we say? 9.5. So we're going to come over here and we're going to mark 9.5. Okay. 9.5, which is going to fall about right there. Give or take, like I say, we're eyeballing it. It's not the end of the world. It might be with the COVID. Okay.
Yeah, this is a quarantine hydraulic edition.
We're in the COVID edition of installing hydraulics.
Yeah.
So
you didn't see the tape mark on the floor, but it's 6 feet from lonestar over here.
Yeah. So if you look right here, this kind of gives you an idea of what's about to happen. You got our fitting here, and this is where our bend is going to start. It's going to roll over about 1.5 inches, and hopefully it's going to line up with this.
Yeah.
Okay. So we put it
pretty
back in the bender.
damn close.
We put it back in the bender. Okay. And this is where so we're kind of getting into a 2-part bend here. So you got to kind of mock it up as if you were actually bending it. So we put it in the 0, like usual. Okay. Now we mock it up. That looks off. Okay. So if we were to bend that right there as it sits, we're basically coming back forward.
The wrong way.
The wrong way. Okay. So we got to pretend like we're actually bending it, which is probably going to be this way.
Yeah.
Boom. Now, with my right arm, I'm going to roll it down, and it's going to line up. So you have to kind of eyeball, because right here, this angle right here, if you see it, okay, see how that moves? When the bend comes down, this movement right here is going to control this or that, right? But we don't want this or that. We want that. We want straight up and down. So in order to accomplish that, this plane right here needs to be at a 90-degree angle with this plane right here. And really, I'm not sure if there's a professional way to achieve that, but I do it with my eyeball. Okay. I don't know, looks good to me. So, right there. And it's gonna come, that fitting isn't quite parallel. Okay. About like that. And then we're finna roll it down. We're about to roll it down 90 degrees. Straight down. Okay? Okay? The reason why it gets stuck in the bender like that is because the tubing heats up as it's bent and it expands. For those who are wondering why you beat it on the ground. Okay. So then we come back over here, we level that out. Okay. And if you look, with a little bit of tweaking, this pretty much lines up with this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now we need to figure out where is our bend. We need to bend it over here. You want to change spots with me? Yeah. We want to bend this up to this.
Right.
Okay.
So we want to keep this one.
We want to keep this one square.
Mm-hmm.
We want to keep this one square parallel with the block. Okay. Which is kind of tricky. And then you figure out the distance between this and this plane.
Right.
Okay, bring y'all back once we figure that out. All right, so we're doing a little mock-up here. So we got the fittings tight. So this is parallel to how the tank is going to be. This plane right here is parallel to the block. Okay, so we want it coming level across. We don't want it going down. We don't want it going up. So we got it pretty parallel.
It's like a straight.
And then we put a piece of tubing in here because this is basically mocking or imitating the rest of the bend.
Yeah, so this has already been tight.
This is
So
already
we
tight,
know
so we're
this is
squared with
straight.
that. So this is where our bend is going to end up.
Right.
So we marked it where it's going to end up.
Mm-hmm.
We need to back off 1.5 inches from that, put a bend. It may fall a little bit short, but we can always cut it off of this end and push the whole assembly forward.
Yeah.
So we'll do that right now. 1.5 inches up. Which is about right there. Like, where's the fucking half at? At the dot, I guess? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Are you recording that?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where we're going to start our bend. And now we're working on, what, 3 bends?
Yeah, 3
So it gets tricky here. And, you know, you can basically ruin this. You
The
can
whole
ruin
piece.
this piece of tubing right here on this last bend. And then you're out 28 inches of tubing. Okay, so we need to, we're pretending as if we're mocking it up, right? So boom, we're in there. So that's not the right bend, right? Because if we were to bend that right there, it's gonna bring it, hold on, pull it back out.
Back to me.
No, I'm a little confused right here. Okay. That's going to bring it all kinds of stupid. So we need to swing this thing around
The opposite way.
the opposite way. Which it gets tricky.
Yeah, it does.
It's tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
try.
So let me mark it up on this side. Yeah, right here.
Let's go all the way around towards me. All the way. All the way. And actually, this is backwards. We need it like this. This is what we need. Somebody calling.
My daughter.
Dad,
Sophia?
your curfew is up. You shall come home or else I'll eat your phones.
Well, there you go. You see this phone in front of me?
Yes.
You're gonna be on YouTube. I'm recording a video. Let me call you back, right?
Okay, bye.
All right, we need to rethink this because we need to roll it.
That way.
This is our tubing mark.
Can I hold this one straight?
No, you're good because we already have the mark right here.
Okay.
Okay. So it takes a little bit of thought, process. You want to hold that?
Yeah. You hold it straight.
So what we'll do is we're just going to put the tubing in just like this.
Okay.
Okay. Take it out. We're going to mark it at 0. Okay. And now we're going to put it in here. And we want to make sure that this long plane going across the block right here, this long plane going across the block is perpendicular with this piece of the tool to give a good bend. Okay. So we'll kick that up just a hair. Okay. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're about to roll it with my right arm forward straight to the fitting. Okay?
Right there, yeah. So what you're looking at is a 3-part bend.
A 3-piece bend. It's complicated.
Yeah.
And like I said previously, the tubing heats up, so you got to kind of work with it a little bit.
Just bang it on the floor.
Bang it on the floor. Now, if we say our prayers,
Always. Yeah. A little bit of tweaking.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. So the tweaking part comes
After it's
after
flared.
it's flared. After it's flared and tightened, you can give these bends a little more oomph, and it's going to tweak it to where it squares up.
Yeah.
So if you look at it right now, it's kind of a rough draft. It's a little bit off right here.
Yeah, a little bit.
But
Little higher- little
this
higher
this
on
fitting
thing.
can control this.
Yeah.
This fitting can move that,
Right.
and we'll bring y'all back and we'll show you how to flare it. Okay, we're good. We're on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting ready to flare these 2 fittings. Super simple. The tool I'm using right here is it's an Imperial 400F. I've had this thing probably maybe 15 years. It'll flare up to 3/4 inch, I believe. 1/2 inch with ease, 3/8 with super ease. Brake lines, really easy, but it's 37 degree. Okay, that's an important note because all hydraulic fittings, all JIC, they're all 37 degree. They're not 45. I believe brake lines might be 45. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if you were to try and flare this stuff with a 45 degree flare tool,
It won't seal.
you're gonna have leaks.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's got to be a 37 degree hydraulic flare tool. Okay, right now all we're gonna do is deburr it. So as you can see, we got the sleeves on, and we got the tube nuts on. That's important.
That's important. Yeah.
Because if you go and flare this without the sleeves and tube nuts,
Yeah.
it's worthless. Because
You gotta cut off the flare and then
redo it.
Your tube's gonna be
your
short.
tube's gonna be short. Okay, so on this aspect of it, the planes and the angles and all that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah,
All we're doing is
we got that down already.
We got that down. So first, before you flare, you deburr. So I got it set up right here in the vise. It uses a 3/4 inch socket, extension, ratchet in the vise. I got it set up, and all you do is you screw this down till it's tight, and you actually
Show that screw again.
want to put a little bit of oil in there, lube it up. You screw that down so it's tight, and now you turn this. And every turn, I like to retighten the screw because it's cutting into the stainless. Okay, it's deburring it. That's all it's doing. We're not flaring. All we're doing is removing burrs.
Yeah, cleaning up the edge on the inside.
Right. Because in burrs, man, they'll cut you.
Yeah.
They'll cut you. And then they make for a sloppy flare, and you get leaks. So once that's done, we crack our 3/4 inch loose. And we take our tubing out. Okay, our tubing's out. Smooth. We take our deburr tool off. It looks identical to the actual flare tool. Pretty close, pretty similar. Okay. And this tool's about 400 bucks. Okay, so it ain't cheap. For some people, maybe. So then we put this in here, back our 1/2 inch hole. We tighten up our 3/4 inch ratchet. So what you're doing now is you tighten the ratchet is you're locking the tubing into the die or whatever you want to call it. So this puts a wrap around it so that when you're flaring it, the flare tool doesn't push the tubing down. Your Home Depot bend, like I said in the previous videos, your Home Depot bends and your flare tools and all that, they're gonna push the tubing out of the die instead of flaring the tubing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not gonna do it. So tighten this up right here. Give this another tight. Okay. And now we're about ready to actually flare this thing. Okay, so as you can see, as I'm tightening this, it's pulling this tool up. So back to the lube, you always want to splash a little bit in there just to keep things moving. Okay, and you come on here and you tighten it, and as I tighten this thing, you're going to see this tubing expand. Okay. So it's opening up. You don't have to, you kind of got to know when to stop. You don't want to go too far, because if you go too far, then your tube nut is not going to go over the flare. It's going to have to thread over the flare, which is fine. It's still going to seal.
It has somewhat of a stop here on the bottom to
Yes.
where you can't go anymore. You typically don't want to go all the way up.
No, you don't want to go all the way. So, that's probably almost there. Looks good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you back this off.
And again, any point of that tool right here is going to be the 37 degrees.
Right, whether it's at the tip or at the end of the cone.
Right.
Still 37 degrees. Okay. So we loosen that all the way. Okay. We crack this die loose so that, and actually, since it's flared, it's not going to come out of the
tool.
It's not going to come out of the tool. So you got to bust the whole thing loose. So there's a lot of moving parts to do this. So then this thing collapses. Boom. As it collapses, then it comes apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man. Get that flare a little closer here to the camera. Look at that.
It's a 37-degree flare. Now, do you have a fitting? You got a fitting out back?
Another
On the
fitting?
table?
A separate one?
Just a separate one to
Yeah,
show.
hold on. We'll get a fit. This is just fitting itself.
Just no.
Oh, the jazz.
Yeah, like a 90.
Yeah.
Something like
All right, we're gonna get a JSC number 8.
that. All right, so this is just an example. We're still recording.
Yeah.
So this is where your tubing is going to actually make a seal.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can put these copper inserts in to actually like accommodate for a poor flare. This copper softer than stainless, obviously, and it's going to kind of like be a squishy cushion to seal it. But if you have a good flare tool, you don't need those. So right there,
Boom.
if you look at this cone, the cone area, the
angle.
machine, the angle of it,
Fits
fits
right in
perfect.
there. Yep.
So then if you slide you got your sleeve and your tube nut, which you put on before you did the flare.
Right.
Because if you didn't do that, you can't get it on.
Yeah, and it's not gonna go through the bands.
Yeah. So as you see, you see how easy that passes the fitting. I mean the flare. If we would have over flared it, you would have to thread that up.
Show the back of the sleeve once you get the tube nut all the way through. Right there. You can see the back of the sleeve right
It's hitting
here.
the collar of it.
So it went through it very easy.
Boom.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this is just a mock-up.
There it is.
And there it is.
That
Once
makes the seal right there.
Once you crank it down, it's going to be sealed. And that's how you flare 1/2-inch 049 seamless stainless steel tubing. This is basically replacing a return hose.
Yeah.
So
And
bring
you-
out. Huh?
Yeah, you want to make sure you get seamless tube.
Oh, absolutely. Because if
Yeah.
you get tubing with a seam, it's going to split on the flare and be trash.
Yeah.
Tubing with a seam is good for compression fittings.
Yeah.
Compression fittings basically clamp down, which are good. I've run compression fittings on hydraulics on cars. They're more expensive. These tube nuts and sleeves, you can get them for online, like $2 a piece maybe. They'll probably be carbon steel. These are stainless, so they're a little bit more. These are probably like $3 or $4 a piece.
Right.
So if you factor in We just bent 28 inches of tubing, which at say $3 a foot is a little over 2 feet. $6 worth of tubing. Okay. These tube nuts and sleeves are say $4 a piece on the high end, is $8.
Yeah, another $1 for the sleeve.
Another $1 for the sleeves, so so $10. $10 for the tube nuts and sleeves. $6 for the tubing.
Right.
And we have a hardline for $16.
Yeah.
Which you can't buy a hose. You can't pay to have a hose made for $16. You know what I mean? Like I said in the previous videos.
Yeah.
So, is it worth buying the $400 tool and the $150 bender? It's up to you if you plan on doing this. But me personally, I enjoy it. So what we're gonna do is bend this, flare this last one up, and then we're gonna mock it up on the pump and see where we're at. Okay, so wanted to show you guys that are watching this video, what's important here is where we at. If you look at this tool right here, you see it has this notch with this leg that's sticking in the notch.
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever if you were to use this tool, this Imperial 400F, you need to put the tool on the die, and you need to push the tubing up to the tool. Then tighten the die. That's going to give you the full movement of the flare tool. Because if you don't, what's going to happen, you can ask me how I know this, is if you don't push the tubing up to the tool and you only have it say half of the distance it is right now, you see in the flare tool, half the distance. Let's just say that the tubing was half the distance. When you go to crank this down to flare it, the tool itself the threads are going to bottom out. But your nut is going to keep going, and it's going to break that leg. When it breaks that leg,
that's it.
Again, ask me how I know. You bottom out, you break the leg. They do not sell individual pieces. So that's very important, because if you don't push the tubing up to the tool, your tool's going to bottom out, you're going to think you're threading it, and you're going to break that leg, and your tool's trash. And Imperial does not sell to the public. And that's kind of a big deal. I actually had to go to I think it was Johnson Supply or some other HVAC company to buy the tool. Imperial 400 Imperial doesn't sell to the public. Kind of like Granger. Granger sells to the public.
Yeah, yeah.
You might be able to get this through Granger, I'm not sure, but I like Imperial 400. But that's kind of a big deal. So right now we were in the middle of busting this thing open, right? How? We were cracking it loose. We were done flaring, right?
It could go a little more. A couple more turns.
A little more. About like that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So as you see, as you're cranking it down, you're running out of threads here, and you're getting more threads down there. When you run out of threads here, that tool's going to break. So now we're ready to bust everything open. So we bust the tool wide open. Okay, we bust our die wide open. So this is just kind of like a little tutorial. I mean, everybody's got their own way of doing things. This is the way, I've been doing things. I've done a few trunks or whatever, hardline some stuff. The good thing about stainless is that you can polish it. You can polish it to look like chrome. It's not going to rust.
Not going to chip.
It's not going to chip. It's stainless. It's stainless steel. So let's see. We bust this down. This thing's going to cooperate today. There we go. There we go.
Bam. Easy money.
It didn't get caught.
Nope. Went right through it.
And we're good. So now, bring y'all back once we get this thing on the pump. Okay, so just to recap, we got it tightened down on the pump. It took a little bit of tweaking to level the lines out with the fittings, but there's always room for movement. But this was 28 inches of tubing total, and it actually came out pretty good. Had this one been short, we could have took it off of this one and moved the whole assembly forward, reflared or whatever we needed to do. So that's how you hardline a pump. This is, like I say, 1/2 inch 049 stainless on a piston pump. You can run this stuff on pressure or return. It ain't gonna bust. Your hose is gonna bust before this stuff busts.
Oh yeah.
Got the Parker Slow. I mean, this thing is like super beefy and it's ready to do what it's designed to do. And we did it right here in the backyard, literally.
Yeah.
Take a look. We're
There
in the
you go.
backyard. Yeah, I do have some money invested in the tools 15 years ago, but they've paid for themselves I don't know how many times over. And like I say in the previous video, you can, you know, if next week or next month or next year you get tired of this right here, we can put this one down and run it under the tank, run this one up. You know, you can change stuff up
The whole thing.
for $30.
Yeah.
For $30 worth of tubing,
Yeah.
you can redesign your whole setup.
Yeah.
So, you know, just try to help you guys out that are wondering how this is done. You know, you got to buy the tools first off, and really it's trial and error. I mean, I still make mistakes, but you just have to account for the radius of the bend and use a tape measure and a marker, and you can do this at home. It's not that hard. I think the tank's coming back tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow
Yeah,
we
chrome-
should have the
chrome
tank
piston tank.
back from the
Back in
chrome
plates,
platers.
rods. This
Mhm.
thing's gonna be
Man,
a beast.
yeah, should be
So-
putting oil in that sucker pretty soon.
Yeah, probably tomorrow. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe tomorrow this time we'll be putting oil in it
Right.
and starting to put the batteries in and all that. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned.